Okay, so this is all the bits laid out on the bench. Looks a bit of a rat's nest at the moment, but it does all fit in the box and it does all work. So if I start up the screen, you can see that I've made a few alterations from the previous version. I've taken the slider control off that used to go across here somewhere, simply because I've never really used it. I've got presets for all of the main settings here, either based on Shopsmith's recommendations, or in some cases I've put a much lower one. For example, for rounding off stuff over 6 inches, I've got a starting speed of 200. I might even reduce that. Once I set a speed, I can then use these buttons here to tweak up and down by about 5 revs or 50 revs in either direction. For those who've not seen it before, when I select a speed, the target revs appear here. The actual revs appear over here. Now, because the control system is actually in the Shopsmith at the moment, I can't show that on the bench here, but I can simulate it by running just a counter in there. And you can see that it doesn't interfere with the rest of the display. It doesn't hang the rest of the display. Now, on all of the screens, I've got this extraction on and off. If you've got a small workshop or a big workshop, it's a pain to have to go and turn the extraction on and off, so I can do that from here. So at the moment, I've just got it connected up to this small fan at the back of the bench there, so you can see, and probably here, that works all right. So that's on, that's off, that's available from any of my screens. I can select a speed on here. That's how I go for 600. And the important thing is that the motor does start up. You can see the motor down here running at 600, and I've got it now so that it just starts straight away as soon as I choose the speed I want. And one of the things I found a pain using the Shopsmith was having to wind the speed up and down, particularly if you were going up to 3,800 for the table saw, all the way back down to 0, check something, and then wind it all back up again. With this, I can just press a stop button and the motor will stop, and you can see that the power control there still shows 19.6%, and it's gone blue. I can just press the start button and it will restart, and it goes green to show me it's done that. So I can get an instant on and off. Tweaking the speeds up and down, I can go up about 5 revs at a time with that, about 50 with that. When I switch functions across the top here, it takes the speed back to 0. So if I switch to drill, you'll see two things happen. The speed will go back to 0, and this gate here that will go onto the lathe, that one, that should shut, and the drill one would open. So clicking on drill, you see that gate is shut automatically, and down here you can see the other servos that will go on the other gates, so that as I switch between different functions, they move about and will control everything. So just having a look at the other bit that I've put on this one, if I go across to the extraction and lift thing there, I've just got some test buttons here for closing gates, opening gates and so on, but I've added this extra thing for the lift. Now, I've used this motor that you can see here, the Treadmill incline motor. I've used that, and I reckon I can build a lift that will lift the Shopsmith up to a good position for working on the lathe. It's got a 900-pound pull. If I click on up and just stop it rotating, you'll see that that winds the thing in pretty slowly because it's well geared, but with a 900-pound pull, it should have enough to move the Shopsmith, and I can stop it and move it down again with those buttons. So what have we got here on the bench? I've got the Raspberry Pi, which controls the touch screen. That basically looks after the touch screen. It also has this connection here, which goes off to a relay over there. That relay just turns the fan on and off. I've got a few other cables that go from here to that little unit there, which is purchased from Adafruit. that controls the servos. So the Raspberry Pi takes care of all of that. It also, via this serial port, sends messages to the Arduino. That will give the rev per minute count. It also sends the pulse width signal to the controller from the Treadmill, the MC2100, which I think gives a much smoother control and a much quieter control than the old MC60s used to. So that's the basic layout of everything. That's, or a similar one to that, is already in my Shopsmith. A similar motor to this one is already in my Shopsmith. It's 2¼ horsepower continuous duty. It's about 11 inches long, so it's about the maximum that will fit in with this built-in fan at the back. So in the control box we have the Raspberry Pi and the Arduino. That I'm going to stick out remotely near to the servos, and I've got the relay box over there, which simply is on the end of a long piece of bell wire here, basically, that sends a 3.3 volt signal from the Raspberry Pi to switch the 240 volt fan on and off. So that's an overview of everything at the moment. All seems to be working fine. The trickiest bit, I suppose, was learning how to make sure that the rev per minute counter, when that was going, didn't interfere with the display, so it kept it live, so I can select a speed and everything fires up. Nothing happens that shouldn't. I do have a red warning light that can come on there, but I've never managed to simulate any problem which would show that, so I'll probably just leave that out in future. It doesn't seem to be possible to do it, and there is a shutdown button to close everything down at the end, which just shuts down the software. So that's about it at the moment. I'm hoping to get it all into a much smaller box than the previous one, held by magnet, so I can stick it wherever I like, on the side of the bandsaw, up on the front of the bandsaw, or out on the front of whatever I'm doing on the table saw, so that I don't have to reach underneath to turn anything on and off. That's about it for the moment.